It was a calm and quiet evening in the small town of Maplewood. The sun had just begun to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. A gentle breeze rustled through the trees, making the leaves dance softly. Everything seemed peaceful, almost too perfect. But for Aaliyah Johnson, this night would turn into something she would never forget. Aaliyah was a 17-year-old high school senior who worked part-time at a cafe near her house. She loved her job because it allowed her to save up money for college while meeting new people every day. On this particular evening, she had finished her shift and was walking home. Her backpack hung loosely over one shoulder, and her headphones played her favorite playlist as she strolled along the sidewalk. The streets were mostly empty, except for an occasional car passing by or a neighbor watering their lawn. As she walked, Aaliyah didn't notice the patrol car that had been following her for a few blocks. Inside the vehicle were two police officers, Greg Miller and Ryan Carter. Both men had been patrolling the area when they received a call about suspicious activity nearby. Someone had reported seeing a young person acting strangely around the shops close to where Aaliyah worked. Without much thought, the officers decided to investigate. They spotted Aaliyah walking alone and assumed she might be the person described in the report. "Hey, hold up," Officer Miller called out as he pulled the car over to the curb. His voice startled Aaliyah, causing her to jump slightly. She paused and turned around, pulling out her earbuds. "What's going on?" she asked, her tone cautious but polite. "Got a call about someone acting suspiciously around here," Officer Carter replied, stepping out of the car. He gestured toward Aaliyah. "Do you live around here?" Aaliyah nodded slowly, feeling confused. "Yeah, I do. I work at the cafe down the street, and I'm just heading home now." Officer Miller narrowed his eyes, studying her carefully. "Mind if we ask you a few questions, just routine stuff?" At first, Aaliyah didn't think much of it. She figured they were just doing their jobs and trying to keep the neighborhood safe. So she answered their questions honestly, explaining that she had been working all afternoon and hadn't done anything unusual. But as the conversation went on, things started to feel off. The officers kept asking repetitive questions, and their tone grew more accusatory. "Are you sure you didn't take anything from the store?" Officer Miller pressed, folding his arms across his chest. "Somebody said they saw someone matching your description leaving with some items." Aaliyah shook her head firmly. "No, I swear I didn't steal anything. I've been working nonstop since noon, and I haven't even been inside any stores today." Despite her explanations, the officers didn't seem convinced. Instead, they exchanged glances, silently agreeing to search her belongings. Aaliyah felt a knot form in her stomach as she watched them rifle through her backpack. They found nothing, just a few textbooks, her wallet, and a water bottle, and a water. Still unsatisfied, Officer Miller stepped closer to her, his expression hardening. "Well, maybe you're hiding something somewhere else," he muttered under his breath. Before Aaliyah could respond, he reached out and grabbed the edge of her skirt. In one swift motion, he yanked it upward, exposing the waistband underneath. Time seemed to freeze in that moment. Aaliyah gasped, her face flushing with embarrassment and anger. She instinctively tried to pull away, but Officer Miller held firm. Then, something unexpected happened. Both officers froze, their eyes widening in shock. There, stitched neatly into the fabric of her skirt, was a label that read, "Mayor's Office." For a split second, no one moved. Aaliyah stared at them, her heart pounding in her chest. Officer Carter shot a nervous glance at his partner, his earlier confidence melting away. Officer Miller quickly let go of her skirt, muttering an apology under his breath. It was clear that they had made a grave mistake. Aaliyah stood there, trembling with a mix of emotions, humiliation, fear, and disbelief. She couldn't believe what had just happened. All she wanted to do was get home safely. But instead, she had been subjected to such an invasive and degrading act, and now these officers knew exactly who she was. Without wasting another second, Aaliyah pulled out her phone and dialed her mother's number. Tears welled up in her eyes as she waited for someone to pick up. When Mayor Lisa Johnson heard her daughter's shaky voice on the other end of the line, she immediately knew something was wrong. "Mom, you need to come, please," Aaliyah pleaded, struggling to keep her composure. Within minutes, Mayor Johnson and her husband, Marcus, arrived at the scene. By then, a small crowd had gathered, curious about what was happening. Some neighbors recognized Aaliyah and whispered among themselves, wondering why the police were involved. As soon as Mayor Johnson saw her daughter standing there with red eyes and a trembling lip, she marched straight up to the officers. "What is going on here?" she demanded, her voice sharp and commanding. Officer Miller and Carter fumbled for words, offering weak excuses and half-hearted apologies. But Mayor Johnson wasn't interested in their explanations. She wrapped an arm around Aaliyah, guiding her away from the officers and back toward their car. That night, the entire family sat together in their living room, trying to process what had happened. Aaliyah recounted every detail, her voice breaking at times. Her parents listened intently, their faces growing darker with each word. They knew this wasn't just about their daughter, it was about something much bigger. This incident highlighted the deep-rooted issues of racial profiling and bias that still plagued their community. As news of the event spread throughout Maplewood, outrage began to build. Social media lit up with posts condemning the officers' actions, and calls for accountability echoed across the town. For Aaliyah and her family, this was only the beginning of a long and difficult journey. But little did they know. The next morning, the small town of Maplewood woke up to a storm. The story of what had happened to Aaliyah Johnson spread like wildfire. By sunrise, almost everyone in town knew about the incident. It started with whispers among neighbors who had seen the scene unfold the night before. Then, someone posted about it on social media, and within hours the post had thousands of shares. People were shocked, angry, and heartbroken. Mayor Lisa Johnson was no stranger to public attention, but this time felt different. As she sipped her coffee at the kitchen table, she scrolled through her phone, reading comments and messages from people all over the country. Some offered support and sympathy, while others criticized her for not doing enough to address systemic racism in their community. Her hands trembled slightly as she put the phone down. Marcus, her husband, noticed her distress and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We'll get through this," he said softly. "But we have to stand up for Aaliyah. This isn't just about her. It's about every kid who looks like her." Lisa nodded, though her mind was racing. She knew they couldn't ignore what had happened. If they stayed silent, it would send the wrong message. But speaking out meant opening themselves up to even more scrutiny. Still, she didn't hesitate. Protecting her daughter, and the values she believed in, was worth any cost. By mid-morning, the mayor held an impromptu press conference outside their home. Reporters gathered quickly, eager to hear her side of the story. Cameras flashed as Lisa stepped onto the porch, flanked by Marcus and Aaliyah. Aaliyah looked nervous, clutching her mother's arm tightly. Lisa took a deep breath and began to speak. "Last night, my daughter was subjected to an act of humiliation and discrimination by two officers who were supposed to protect her," Lisa said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "This is unacceptable. No one, especially a young black woman, should ever be treated this way. We deserve answers, and we deserve accountability." Her words resonated deeply with those listening. Many residents nodded in agreement, some even cheering in support. Others filmed the speech on their phones, sharing it online. The video went viral almost instantly, sparking conversations far beyond Maplewood. People across the nation expressed outrage, demanding justice for Aaliyah. Meanwhile, Officer Greg Miller and Officer Ryan Carter found themselves at the center of a growing scandal. Both men had been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation, but that didn't stop the backlash. Protesters gathered outside the police station, holding signs that read, "Justice for Aaliyah," and "End police brutality." Some chanted slogans, while others simply stood silently, showing solidarity. Inside the station, tensions ran high. Chief Daniels, the head of the police department, called an emergency meeting with his staff. He paced back and forth in front of the room, visibly frustrated. "This is a disaster," he muttered under his breath. Turning to face the officers, he added, "We need to figure out how to fix this, fast." But fixing it wouldn't be easy. Internal Affairs launched an investigation into Miller and Carter's actions, reviewing body cam footage and interviewing witnesses. What they uncovered painted a troubling picture. Both officers had a history of complaints filed against them, ranging from excessive force to discriminatory behavior. One report described how Carter had stopped a black teenager for no apparent reason and searched him without cause. Another detailed how Miller had used aggressive language during a traffic stop involving a Latina driver. These incidents had been swept under the rug in the past, but now they were coming to light. As the investigation continued, the town grew more divided. Some residents defended the officers, claiming they were just doing their jobs. "They're not bad guys," one man told a reporter. "They made a mistake, sure, but does that mean we should ruin their careers?" Others disagreed, arguing that mistakes like these weren't isolated incidents. They were symptoms of a much larger problem. Back at home, Aaliyah struggled to cope with everything that was happening. She felt overwhelmed by the constant attention. Friends texted her nonstop, asking if she was okay or offering advice. Teachers emailed her parents saying they hoped she'd feel comfortable returning to school soon. Strangers sent messages of encouragement, calling her brave and strong, but none of it made her feel better. Instead, she felt trapped in a spotlight she hadn't asked for. One afternoon, Aaliyah sat in her room staring blankly at the wall. Her best friend, Mia Thompson, knocked gently on the door before letting herself in. "Hey," Mia said softly, sitting down beside her. "How are you holding up?" Aaliyah shrugged, avoiding eye contact. "I don't know," she admitted. "It's like I can't stop thinking about it. Every time I close my eyes, I see their faces, the officers, and then I think about what could have happened if I wasn't, the mayor's daughter." Mia frowned, placing a reassuring hand on Aaliyah's shoulder. "That's messed up," she said. "You shouldn't have to go through this. Nobody should." Aaliyah sighed, tears welling up in her eyes. "I just want it to be over. I want to forget it ever happened." Mia hesitated for a moment, then spoke again. "Maybe you shouldn't forget. Maybe you should use this to make things better, for yourself and for other people." Aaliyah looked at her friend confused. "What do you mean?" "Well," Mia explained, "you have a platform now. People are listening to you. You could say something, do something, to help change things. It's like maybe talk about how this shouldn't happen to anyone, no matter who they are." At first, Aaliyah dismissed the idea. The thought of speaking publicly terrified her. She wasn't sure she had the strength to relive that night, let alone share it with the world. But as the days passed, Mia's words stuck with her. She started paying closer attention to the conversations happening around her, the protests, the debates, the calls for reform. Slowly, she began to realize that her story mattered. It wasn't just about her. It was about so many others who had faced similar injustices but hadn't been heard. While Aaliyah wrestled with her emotions, her parents worked tirelessly behind the scenes. Lisa reached out to civil rights organizations, seeking guidance on how to handle the situation. One attorney, Daniel Foster, agreed to take on Aaliyah's case pro bono. Known for his work fighting police misconduct, Foster promised to hold the department accountable. Together, they drafted a lawsuit alleging racial profiling, excessive force, and violation of Aaliyah's constitutional rights. The document outlined every detail of the incident, leaving no room for ambiguity. When it was filed, the news made headlines once again, reigniting public interest in the case. Officer Miller and Carter, meanwhile, became pariahs in the community. Their colleagues avoided them, fearing guilt by association. Friends stopped, inviting them to gatherings, and strangers glared at them whenever they ventured outside. The weight of the accusations bore down heavily on both men, forcing them to confront the consequences of their actions. As the weeks dragged on, the atmosphere in Maplewood remained tense. Protests continued, drawing larger crowds each time. Local leaders organized town hall meetings to discuss police reform, inviting residents to share their thoughts and experiences. Aaliyah attended one such meeting with her family, though she stayed quiet throughout most of it. Listening to others recount their own stories of mistreatment by law enforcement left her feeling both angry and inspired. By the end of the meeting, she realized something important. She wasn't alone. Countless others had endured similar hardships, often without the resources or support needed to fight back. For the first time since the incident, Aaliyah felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, her experience could lead to real change, not just for her, but for everyone. And so, as the sun set on another day in Maplewood, Aaliyah made a decision. She wouldn't let fear silence her anymore. Whatever came next, she would face it head-on, using her voice to shine a light on the issues that mattered most. Document. Part 3. The days following the town hall meeting were a blur for Aaliyah Johnson. She spent most of her time thinking about what she had heard from other residents, stories that mirrored her own pain and frustration. Some people talked about being stopped by police for no reason, while others shared how they'd been treated unfairly at work or in stores. Each story added another layer to the picture of inequality that existed in Maplewood, even though many preferred to pretend it didn't. Aaliyah knew she couldn't stay silent anymore. Her parents supported her decision to speak out, but she still felt nervous. What if people judged her? What if they thought she was trying to make herself look like a victim? These questions swirled in her mind as she sat on her bed one evening, staring at her phone. Mia had encouraged her to start small, maybe write a post online or talk to a local news outlet. But Aaliyah wanted to do something bigger. She wanted her words to reach as many people as possible. Finally, after days of hesitation, she decided to take action. With her mother's help, she drafted a statement explaining what had happened to her and why it mattered. The statement wasn't just about her experience, it was also a call for change. Aaliyah wrote about how young black women often face discrimination not only from law enforcement, but also in schools, workplaces, and everyday life. She ended the statement with a simple yet powerful message. No one deserves to be treated this way. We need to stand together and demand better. When the statement went live on social media, the response was overwhelming. Thousands of people liked, shared, and commented on it. Many thanked Aaliyah for speaking up, saying her courage inspired them to share their own stories. Others offered words of encouragement, telling her she was making a difference. For the first time since the incident, Aaliyah felt a sense of purpose. Maybe this could be the start of something meaningful. Meanwhile, the investigation into Officer Greg Miller and Officer Ryan Carter continued. Internal Affairs reviewed hours of body cam footage, interviewed witnesses, and examined past complaints against the two men. The more they uncovered, the clearer it became that this wasn't an isolated incident. Both officers had patterns of behavior that raised red flags. In one case, Carter had detained a teenager simply because he looked suspicious, even though the boy hadn't done anything wrong. In another, Miller had used unnecessary force during an arrest, leaving the suspect with injuries. These findings shocked many in the community, especially those who had defended the officers earlier. Chief Daniels, under immense pressure from the public and city officials, announced that both men would remain on leave indefinitely. He also promised sweeping reforms within the department, including mandatory training on racial bias and de-escalation tactics. However, these promises did little to ease tensions. Protesters demanded more than empty words. They wanted real accountability. One evening, a group of activists organized a march through downtown Maplewood. Hundreds of people showed up, carrying signs and chanting slogans like "Justice Now" and "Black Lives Matter." Aaliyah attended with her family, feeling a mix of pride and anxiety. As they walked alongside neighbors and friends, she noticed how united everyone seemed. It was a powerful reminder that she wasn't alone in this fight. At the end of the march, organizers invited Aaliyah to say a few words. Standing in front of the crowd, microphone in hand, she felt her heart race. This was the moment she'd been preparing for, but now that it was here, she wasn't sure she could do it. Taking a deep breath, she looked out at the sea of faces and began to speak. "I never imagined I'd be standing here today," she started, her voice trembling slightly. "What happened to me shouldn't have happened to anyone. But the truth is, it happens all the time. To people who don't have cameras rolling or reporters watching. That's why we need to keep fighting. Not just for me, but for everyone who deserves to feel safe and respected." Her words earned loud applause, and several people wiped away tears. Afterwards, strangers approached her to thank her for sharing her story. One woman hugged her tightly, saying, "You're so brave, keep going. You're making a difference." While Aaliyah gained confidence in using her voice, the lawsuit against the police department moved forward. Attorney Daniel Foster worked tirelessly to build a strong case, gathering evidence and interviewing witnesses. He believed they had a good chance of winning, but he warned Aaliyah and her family that the process could take months, or even years. The meantime, the mayor's office became a hub of activity. Lisa Johnson met regularly with community leaders, discussing ways to address systemic racism and improve relations between residents and law enforcement. She proposed creating a civilian oversight board to review complaints against police officers, ensuring greater transparency and accountability. Though some council members resisted the idea, public support for the initiative grew stronger each day. Marcus, Aaliyah's father, also got involved. He reached out to local businesses and organizations, encouraging them to sponsor programs aimed at empowering young people of color. Together, they launched a mentorship initiative designed to connect teens with professionals in various fields. The goal was to provide guidance and opportunities for kids who might otherwise fall through the cracks. For Aaliyah, seeing her family come together like this gave her hope. She realized that fighting for justice wasn't just about protesting or filing lawsuits, it was about building a better future for everyone. Still, there were moments when doubt crept in. Late at night, when the house was quiet, she sometimes wondered if anything would really change. Would people forget about her story once the headlines faded? Or would this moment spark lasting progress? Back at school, Aaliyah faced a mix of reactions from her classmates. Most were supportive, offering kind words or asking how they could help. But a few students whispered behind her back, calling her attention-seeking or dramatic. At first, these comments stung, but Aaliyah learned to ignore them. She reminded herself that their opinions didn't matter, not compared to the bigger picture. One day during lunch, a teacher approached her with an idea. Mrs. Peterson, who taught history, suggested organizing a student-led discussion about race and equality. "Your story has opened a lot of eyes," she said. "Why not use this moment to educate others?" Aaliyah agreed, and soon, plans for the event were underway. Students from different backgrounds came together to plan activities and presentations. Some created posters highlighting statistics about racial disparities in education and employment. Others prepared speeches sharing their personal experiences with discrimination. On the day of the event, the auditorium was packed with students, teachers, and even a few parents. As Aaliyah watched her peers take the stage, she felt a surge of pride. They were smart, passionate, and determined to make a difference. When it was her turn to speak, she focused on the importance of listening to one another. "Change starts with understanding," she told the audience. "If we can learn to see things from someone else's perspective, maybe we can find solutions that work for everyone." Afterward, several students approached her to express gratitude. One boy, whose family had recently immigrated to the U.S., said, "I've always felt like no one cared about what I go through. Hearing you talk makes me feel like I'm not invisible anymore." As weeks turned into months, the movement in Maplewood gained momentum. Protests evolved into workshops and educational seminars. Local artists painted murals celebrating diversity and resilience. Churches hosted panel discussions featuring experts on racial justice. Even the police department began hosting community meetings, inviting residents to voice their concerns directly to officers. Through it all, Aaliyah remained at the center of it, not because she sought the spotlight, but because people genuinely respected her courage and authenticity. She continued to attend events, give interviews, and advocate for reform. Though she still had moments of fear and uncertainty, she refused to let them hold her back. By the end of the year, Maplewood looked different, not perfect, but moving in the right direction. Officer Miller and Carter were eventually fired after being found guilty of misconduct. The Civilian Oversight Board was established, giving residents a greater say in how the police department operated. And Aaliyah? She emerged as a symbol of strength and resilience, proving that even in the face of injustice, hope and determination could lead to change. But for Aaliyah, this was only the beginning. She knew there was still so much work to be done, not just in Maplemore but everywhere, and she was ready to keep fighting. As the months passed, Aaliyah Johnson's life began to settle into a new rhythm. The initial chaos of protests, media interviews, and public appearances had slowed down, but her commitment to making a difference remained stronger than ever. She was no longer just a teenager caught in an unjust situation. She had become a voice for change. Her courage inspired people of all ages, from her classmates at school to adults who saw her as a symbol of hope. One afternoon, Aaliyah sat at the kitchen table with her parents, going over plans for an upcoming event. The town of Maplewood had decided to hold its first ever Youth Empowerment Summit, and Aaliyah had been asked to give the opening speech. The summit aimed to bring together young people from across the community to discuss issues like racism, inequality, and how to create a fairer future. It was a big responsibility, but Aaliyah felt ready. Her mother, Lisa, smiled proudly as she watched her daughter flip through notes. "You've come such a long way," Lisa said softly. "I'm so proud of you." Aaliyah looked up, a hint of nervousness in her eyes. What if I mess it up? What if I say the wrong thing? Marcus, her father, leaned forward and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You won't mess it up," he said firmly. "Just speak from your heart. That's what got us this far." Those words stayed with Aaliyah as she prepared for the summit. She spent hours writing and rewriting her speech, making sure every word reflected her thoughts and feelings. She wanted to talk about her own experience, but also about the broader challenges facing young people, especially those of color. Most importantly, she wanted to inspire others to take action, to believe that their voices mattered. The day of the summit arrived and the auditorium buzzed with excitement. Hundreds of teenagers filled the seats along with teachers, parents, and local leaders. Posters decorated the walls, each one featuring messages of unity and empowerment. Aaliyah stood backstage, clutching her notes tightly. Her heart pounded as she listened to the MC introduce her. "And now please welcome Aaliyah Johnson, whose bravery has sparked a movement here in Maplewood." The crowd erupted into applause as Aaliyah stepped onto the stage. For a moment she froze, overwhelmed by the sea of faces staring back at her. Then she took a deep breath and began to speak. "Hi, everyone," she started, her voice steady despite her nerves. "When I agreed to speak today, I thought a lot about what I wanted to say. And honestly, I realized there's only one thing I really want to tell you. Don't be afraid to use your voice." She paused, glancing out at the audience. Some students nodded, while others scribbled notes in their notebooks. Encouraged, Aaliyah continued. "A few months ago, something happened to me that changed my life forever. I was treated unfairly, not because of anything I did, but because of who I am. At first, I didn't know how to react. I was scared, angry, and embarrassed. But then I realized something important. Staying silent wouldn't fix anything. So, I decided to speak up. And guess what? People listened. By now, the room was completely silent. Every eye was fixed on Aaliyah as she spoke, with passion and conviction. The truth is, none of us are too young or too small to make a difference. Whether it's standing up against injustice, helping someone in need, or simply being kind, everything we do matters. We have the power to shape the world around us, if we're willing to try. When she finished speaking, the audience erupted into cheers. Students jumped to their feet, clapping and whistling. Aaliyah felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had done it. She had shared her story and inspired others to take action. After the summit, Aaliyah found herself busier than ever. Schools and organizations across the region invited her to speak at events. Local news outlets featured her story, highlighting her efforts to promote equality and justice. Some even called her a role model, a title that made her blush but also motivated her to keep going. At the same time, Aaliyah worked closely with her family and attorney Daniel Foster to push for reforms within the police department. The Civilian Oversight Board was now fully operational, reviewing complaints and holding officers accountable for misconduct. Training programs focused on racial bias and de-escalation became mandatory for all law enforcement personnel. While these changes weren't perfect, they represented progress, and Aaliyah took pride in knowing she had played a part in making them happen. One evening, as she scrolled through social media, Aaliyah came across a post from a girl named Tanya, who lived in a neighboring town. Tanya wrote about being stopped by police while walking home from school. Though nothing drastic had happened, the encounter left her feeling scared and powerless. Moved by Tanya's story, Aaliyah reached out privately to offer support. "Hey, I read your post," Aaliyah wrote. "I know exactly how you feel. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." Tanya responded almost immediately. "Wow, thank you so much. I can't believe you replied. It means a lot to hear from someone who understands." Their conversation marked the beginning of a friendship. Over time, Aaliyah connected with other young people who had faced similar experiences. Together, they formed an online group called Voices United, where members could share stories, offer advice, and brainstorm ways to advocate for change. The group quickly grew, attracting members from all over the country. Despite her growing influence, Aaliyah still faced challenges. Not everyone supported her efforts. Some critics accused her of exaggerating her experience or seeking attention. Others dismissed her activism as naive or misguided. At school, a few classmates teased her, calling her mayor's daughter in a mocking tone. These moments were tough, but Aaliyah refused to let them break her spirit. Instead, she leaned on her friends and family for strength. Mia, her best friend, reminded her that haters would always exist, but their opinions didn't define her. "Focus on the people who believe in you," Mia said during one particularly rough day. "They're the ones who matter." Her parents also encouraged her to take breaks when needed. "You're doing amazing work," Lisa told her one evening, "but you're still a kid. Don't forget to take care of yourself." Aaliyah appreciated their reminders. She made time for hobbies she loved, like drawing and listening to music. She also reconnected with old passions, like playing basketball with her friends after school. Balancing activism with everyday life wasn't easy, but it helped her stay grounded. Meanwhile, Officer Greg Miller and Officer Ryan Carter faded from public view. After being fired from the police department, both men struggled to find work. Their names became synonymous with misconduct, and many businesses hesitated to hire them. Chief Daniels, under pressure to rebuild trust, implemented stricter hiring practices and background checks for new recruits. He also hired consultants to review department policies, ensuring they aligned with principles of fairness and accountability. These changes didn't erase the harm caused by Miller and Carter's actions, but they signaled a shift toward a more transparent and just system. Residents noticed the difference too. Complaints against officers decreased and community relations improved. While there was still work to be done, the progress gave people hope. As the year drew to a close, Aaliyah reflected on everything that had happened. What started as a humiliating and painful experience had transformed into a journey of growth and resilience. She had learned the importance of using her voice, standing up for what was right, and supporting others along the way. More than anything, she realized that change was possible, but it required effort, patience, and unity. On New Year's Eve, Aaliyah gathered with her family to celebrate. As fireworks lit up the sky, she made a silent promise to herself. No matter what challenges lay ahead, she would continue fighting for justice, because in her heart she knew that every step forward, even the smallest one, mattered. And so, as the clock struck midnight and a new year began, Aaliyah felt a sense of peace. She had faced adversity and emerged stronger. Whatever the future held, she was ready to embrace it with courage, determination, and hope. The new year brought fresh opportunities for Aaliyah Johnson. Her journey as an advocate had grown beyond Maplewood, reaching people across the country. Schools, community centers, and even national conferences invited her to speak about her experience and share her vision for a fairer world. Each event gave her a chance to connect with others who shared her passion for justice. Though she was still just 17, Aaliyah carried herself with confidence and purpose. She had learned that being young didn't mean she couldn't make a difference. One of her biggest moments came in February when she was invited to speak at a large youth leadership conference in Chicago. Hundreds of students from different states gathered to discuss issues like racial equality, climate change, and education reform. Aaliyah stood nervously on stage, gripping the microphone as she looked out at the crowd. The room was filled with eager faces, all waiting to hear what she had to say. "I'm not here because I have all the answers," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I'm here because I believe in us, in our ability to dream big and work hard to make those dreams come true. None of us are too small to create change." Her speech resonated deeply with the audience. Afterward, dozens of students lined up to talk to her, asking questions and sharing their own stories. Some told her they felt inspired to start advocacy projects in their own communities. Others simply thanked her for giving them hope. For Aaliyah, these conversations were the most rewarding part of her work. They reminded her why she kept pushing forward even when things got tough. Back home in Maplewood, life continued to improve. The police department's reforms were starting to show results. Complaints against officers dropped significantly, and trust between residents and law enforcement slowly began to rebuild. Chief Daniels credited much of this progress to the Civilian Oversight Board, which ensured transparency and accountability. He also praised programs like mentorship initiatives and community outreach events, which helped bridge gaps between officers and the people they served. Aaliyah played a key role in organizing some of these events. She worked closely with local leaders to plan workshops where teens could learn about their rights and how to interact safely with law enforcement. These sessions weren't just informative, they were empowering. Many participants left feeling more confident and prepared to handle difficult situations. One Saturday morning, Aaliyah attended a workshop at the community center. As she walked around the room answering questions and offering advice, she noticed a familiar face. It was Tanya, the girl she had connected with online months earlier. Tanya smiled shyly and waved. "I didn't know you'd be here," Tanya said, her eyes lighting up. "This is so cool." Aaliyah grinned. "I didn't know you lived nearby. How are you doing?" Tanya hesitated before responding. "Better, thanks to you. Talking to you made me realize I wasn't alone." That meant a lot. Their conversation warmed Aaliyah's heart. Moments like this reminded her that her efforts mattered, not just on a large scale but in individual lives too. As spring approached, Aaliyah faced another milestone: graduation. Balancing activism with schoolwork hadn't been easy, but she managed to excel academically while staying committed to her cause. On the day of her graduation ceremony, she wore her cap and gown with pride, knowing how far she'd come since that fateful night months ago. When it was time for student speeches, Aaliyah stepped onto the stage one last time as a high school senior. She looked out at her classmates, teachers, and family members, feeling grateful for their support. "Graduating today feels like a victory, not just for me but for everyone who believed in me," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "We've all faced challenges, whether big or small. But we're here now because we refuse to give up. So let's keep going. Let's keep fighting for what's right, no matter where life takes us." Her words earned a standing ovation, and many of her classmates wiped away tears. For Aaliyah, it was a moment of closure and celebration, a reminder that her journey was far from over. That summer, Aaliyah prepared for college. She had been accepted to a prestigious university on a scholarship majoring in political science. Her goal was to become a lawyer focusing on civil rights cases. She wanted to use her education to continue advocating for marginalized communities and holding institutions accountable. Before leaving for college, Aaliyah organized one final event in Maplewood, a community festival celebrating diversity and resilience. Local artists performed music and poetry, vendors sold handmade crafts, and families enjoyed food from various cultures. The highlight of the festival was a mural painting activity led by Aaliyah and her friends. Together, they created a vibrant piece of art featuring messages of unity and hope. As the sun set on the festival, Aaliyah stood back to admire the finished mural. Her parents joined her, smiling proudly. "You've done so much for this town," Lisa said, wrapping an arm around her daughter. "And you're only getting started." Aaliyah nodded, feeling a mix of emotions. She was excited for the future, but also sad to leave behind the place where she'd grown up. Still, she knew Maplewood would always be a part of her story, a chapter she cherished deeply. At college, Aaliyah quickly became known as a leader among her peers. She joined campus organizations focused on social justice and started a chapter of Voices United, the group she had helped create online. Through these activities, she met students from diverse backgrounds who shared her commitment to creating change. Together, they planned rallies, fundraisers, and awareness campaigns, tackling issues like voter suppression, affordable housing, and educational inequality. One of her proudest accomplishments came during her sophomore year, when she spearheaded a campaign to increase funding for underprivileged schools. Partnering with professors and local activists, Aaliyah collected data, wrote petitions, and lobbied government officials. Her hard work paid off when state lawmakers approved additional resources for struggling districts. Though college kept her busy, Aaliyah never forgot her roots. Whenever she returned to Maplewood for holidays, she visited old friends and checked in on the programs she had helped launch. Seeing how much the town had transformed filled her with pride. The scars of the past hadn't disappeared entirely, but they had healed significantly, thanks in large part to the collective efforts of its residents. Years later, Aaliyah graduated from law school and began working as a civil rights attorney. Her first major case involved representing a teenager who had been wrongfully detained by police. Drawing on her own experience, Aaliyah fought tirelessly to ensure justice was served. When the verdict came in favor of her client, she felt a surge of satisfaction, not just for winning the case but for proving that change was possible. Throughout her career, Aaliyah remained dedicated to empowering others. She mentored young activists, wrote articles highlighting systemic injustices, and spoke at events around the world. Her story continued to inspire countless individuals, reminding them that courage and determination could overcome even the toughest obstacles. Looking back on her journey, Aaliyah realized how much she had grown. What started as a painful incident had turned into a lifelong mission to fight for equality and fairness. She knew there would always be challenges ahead, but she faced them with unwavering hope. Because in her heart she believed that every step forward, even the smallest one, brought the world closer to a brighter future. And so, Aaliyah Johnson kept moving forward, using her voice to uplift others and build a better tomorrow. Her story was proof that even in the face of adversity, resilience and compassion could spark meaningful change.